going to air it out. Down the field. Catch and a touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Kosko.
College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Nick Kosko with you, as always, every Saturday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. Coming off our first 5-0 weekend of the season. First 5-0 weekend ever, actually. You can believe that, folks. 11-4 on the season in our picks. We are doing well with these lines each and every week. We'll have a fresh 5-pack of picks for you later in the show as well. It's another interesting week, to say the least, in college football. Obviously, I have a lot riding on this week, of course, with my Rutgers Scarlet Knights being 3-0, and we're going up against Michigan. I say we. I can't say that anymore. They are going up against the Michigan Wolverines at 3:30 today. ABC, folks. How about that? National television. So either it's put up or shut up in that type of game in Ann Arbor later today. But we will talk about that in a little bit as well. Some other interesting matchups. You got a top 25 matchup, which we will talk about as well. Texas A&M and Arkansas play later today as well. But what I wanted to start out with today, don't forget Wisconsin and Notre Dame at Soldier Field in Chicago. That is going to be a very interesting one. Jack Cohn going up against his former team against Wisconsin, as he leads the Fighting Irish to try to get to 4-0 now on the season. But they've been a little shaky. He's been really good, but as a team, they've been a little shaky and not exactly where you want them to be. All right, but before we dive into all of that, the rankings this week in the AP poll, and what I've noticed now, this trend of now, it seems like there's going to be some parity, a little bit more parity in college football this season. And when I say that, you look at Alabama, you look at Georgia, and you're thinking to yourself, well, great, they're at the top of the food chain. Who else is going to get in there? They throw Oklahoma in there too, and then whoever the Big Ten champion is, everyone's going to say Ohio State. But the way you look at it right now, through mostly everybody's played 3 games. We're technically through 4 weeks because we had week 0, but we're entering week 4, folks. And we do have, I know you have Alabama and you have Georgia at the top. Okay, that's fine. But Oregon is making more of a statement this season. They're 3-0 as well. They have already beaten Ohio State. They are now number 3 in the latest poll after last week's performance, and of course Oklahoma just scraping by Nebraska. Now Oklahoma is being given the benefit of the doubt, right? All right, so they are 3-0 as well, but they scraped by Nebraska. They beat up some FCS school the previous week, and then they barely beat Tulane, gave them a run for their money in week 1, as everybody remembers that. So the 2 legitimate teams they've played, they've struggled with, but they are given the benefit of the doubt. Still the first 3 weeks. As far as the teams coming after that, notice how I haven't mentioned Ohio State yet. Iowa and Penn State from the Big Ten at 5 and 6. Texas A&M's at 7. Cincinnati at 8. Clemson is down. Everyone forgot about Clemson all of a sudden. They're number 9. It was their 2-1. They have a loss to Georgia. Ohio State is number 10 at 2-1. Florida, their only loss was to Alabama this past weekend, but they're number 11, and Notre Dame at number 12. And now, once you get outside the top 12, you have some other teams that might be able to make a move, such as you look at Ole Miss at number 13. To me, it's Michigan number 19, Michigan State number 20. Those are teams that can make a move. Arkansas, I forgot about them, at number 16. There are a lot of teams now that can make a move up into the top 25 or up into the top 10 and start making some noise for the college football playoff. And when you look at that, you're thinking to yourself, maybe we finally have parity this season. Now, of course, you're going to have the Bamas of the world. I can't see there being a college football playoff this season without Alabama. If Alabama's not in there, then something big must have happened. Right now, by the way they're playing, Alabama's going to get in number 1, and they'll beat a team like Georgia in the SEC title game. Now, where does it leave Georgia? You got to see what happens with the rest of the field. Because if they go undefeated, but they only lose to Alabama later in the season, they still have a major case to get in. Despite not winning a conference title, they made it to their conference championship game, and they lost to the best team in the country. Now, that to me is a good argument to get into the playoff, but has the rest of the country shake out? Oregon, Pac-12 champs, undefeated, back in. They're certainly going to be in. Oklahoma, as long as they win the Big 12, they're going to get in. Probably at undefeated or one loss. And then the Big 10 champ. Right now, it could be Iowa. It could be Penn State. It could be Ohio State. Hell, it could be Michigan. Wisconsin's still lingering. I know that they already have the one loss, but to Penn State. But you have the Big 10 champ. And then don't forget about Clemson. So Georgia could be knocked out. But you have a lot of people angling for spots now. Texas A&M hasn't even played Alabama yet. That was their lone loss last year. Florida, hey, they haven't played Georgia yet. They could beat Georgia and go get back to the conference title game. And maybe they upset Bama this time. So there's a lot of possibilities here. I'm not as confident in saying, okay, it's going to be Alabama, it's going to be Ohio State, it's going to be Clemson, and then you throw in a fourth team. So last year it was Notre Dame. But it was Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, and then insert X. So far this year, we don't have to do that. Giving us more excitement week in and week out. I thought that was fascinating through the first 3 weeks. The fact that Ohio State lost to Oregon. The fact that Alabama, Georgia's still defeated, but Oklahoma's struggling. There's kinks in the armor. Iowa and Penn State are making big moves. Cincinnati's still lurking, another group of 5, but they're still lurking. They're 3-0. They're going to keep winning. Notre Dame struggling but undefeated. Ole Miss rising right now. Arkansas can make a statement today if they knock out Texas A&M. All of a sudden, Arkansas, understand Pittman, top 10 team. Michigan, steadily rising now. They're in the top 20 now. Michigan State, out of nowhere. You just love to see it. Now, I know UCLA plummeted after their loss this week to Fresno State. Fresno State is not making the college football playoff, but UCLA could still win the Pac-12 with just one loss. I mean, who's to say UCLA doesn't go on a run now, wins out the rest of the year, wins the Pac-12? They need to consider them again. Even though they plummeted from 13 to 24. They're still ranked. But you're seeing more. Heck, they're not going to make the college football playoff, but Kansas State is number 25, and they're at 3-0 right now. There's a lot more parity in college football this year. Now, we say that now for 3 weeks, and then it could all shape out over the next 3-4 weeks where it's Bama, Georgia, and Oklahoma at the top, and then Clemson makes their way back up, and then everybody else kind of just falls behind. That could very well happen. But we've seen enough evidence so far to suggest this is going to be a wilder season compared to years past. I want to switch gears here, and I'll go wax poetic right now about my Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Only because they're playing Michigan today. Because the national audience is not on board with the Scarlet Knights quite yet. Now, what Greg Schiano has been able to do over the course of not even 2 years yet. Okay, so he was hired in December of 2019. Okay. So we're talking about almost 2 calendar years now since he was brought back to Rutgers. Last year, in a COVID season, now granted, this is for everybody. COVID season was affecting everybody. No fans, restrictions, players coming in and out, weird schedules. They go 3-6. They take this Michigan team, not this exact Michigan team, but they take this Michigan team to triple overtime at home in Piscataway. A game they were up double digits. A game they should have won. If you realistically look at the Scarlet Knights last year, they did not know how to close out games. It's a different team now. Last year, they couldn't close out Illinois, and they couldn't close out Michigan. Back-to-back weeks, by the way, at home. They were up in the fourth quarter, lost 23-20 to Illinois. They were up by double digits against Michigan, lost 48-42 in triple overtime. And they missed a field goal in overtime to win the game. Now after that, they beat Purdue. Tough loss to Penn State, 23-7. They beat Maryland in overtime, and they got they got edged out by Nebraska. Okay, you have this Rutgers team play this Nebraska team now. I think it goes the other way. If you had this Rutgers team be in the same situation as their Illinois and Michigan games last year, it probably goes the other way. That's 3 wins right there. They're 6-3. Now, there's no sense living in the past here. But I bring this up because they have a huge showdown with Michigan. And this is the they are entering the absolute gauntlet of their schedule. At Michigan, they're home against Ohio State next week, and then 2 weeks from now, they are home against Michigan State. Now, Michigan State, everyone circled because they dominated them last year on the road, figuring, okay, that's going to be a good game. Now, Michigan State looks like the real deal. They look like a conference championship contender all of a sudden. Fast rebuild. So what is a fair expectation for the Scarlet Knights today and moving forward? I, for one, think this team's still going to win 5 games. Go 5-7. But a respectable 5-7. Can they win 6? Absolutely. Could they pull off an upset today? I would never rule it out. To me, I think that this could be Michigan's best team since Harbaugh nearly took his team to the playoff back in 2016. And they lost in overtime to Ohio State on the road. And that game basically determined the East Division winner, and then the winner would have had the inside track to the playoff, which that year Ohio State did. So I'll never rule out an upset, but it's in Ann Arbor. Rutgers is now missing one of their best defenders in Max Melton due to suspension, and Michigan has arguably the best running attack in the country. Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins, and Donovan Edwards. And they have pretty solid quarterback play. Cade McNamara. So I won't rule out an upset, but it's going to be tough to win today. So it'll be interesting to see when we examine. The line right now is plus 21. I believe I see now shifting in some places to 20.5. So the money, it's very, very interesting where it's going right now. People like Rutgers for some reason. I do. But as far as what this team can become this year and moving forward, yeah, you're about to wake up a sleeping giant here, folks. What Greg Schiano's been able to do, top 20 recruiting class in the country. He's got one of the best recruiting classes coming up in the entire Big Ten. That's right, in the entire Big Ten, against the likes of Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State. These next 3 games are really going to determine how competitive this team is going to be. Because then again, they do get road dates at Northwestern, at Illinois, right in the middle of the season. They're at Northwestern October 16th. They have a bye week, and then they're at Illinois. Right now, I would circle those 2 as wins based on how the season has gone so far for everybody. And they host Wisconsin. They're at Indiana. Tough game, but could be a win. They're at Penn State. Rough one. And then they're home against Maryland. So really the winnable games left in the schedule are Northwestern, Illinois, Indiana, and Maryland based on performance this year. But Maryland is pretty darn good this year too, the way they're playing. Rutgers is an interesting bet for a bowl game because they're already halfway there. So as far as what they're going to do the rest of the season, they might be a smart play, especially with these big spreads. Because you look at the history of this team over the last few years, where they weren't any good. And even last year when they were more competitive last year. But in the years prior with Chris Ash as head coach, we're talking post 2014, which was their first year in the Big Ten. They won that. They finished that season 8-5. They beat Michigan that year. They had 3 Big Ten wins. 3-5, whatever the Big Ten. But they beat Michigan. And they were, a couple of turnovers away from beating Penn State at home, losing by 3. These next 3 will determine how competitive this team is going to be and if they're going to be a smart play. For all you local people out here who are supporting the Scarlet Knights and, want to place a little wager on the Scarlet Knights. It's a big spread this week. It's probably going to be a little bit bigger next week, to be honest with you, against Ohio State, even though it's back in Piscataway. They're going to be home dogs against Michigan State when they come in on October 9th. If you start seeing Rutgers play very competitive and start covering these spreads, Vegas is going to have a very, very tough time determining what they're going to do with Rutgers this year. Would they be a road favorite at Northwestern or at Illinois? Depending on how these next 3 games go. I mean, they could be 3-3, but they could still be a road favorite depending on how they played and depending on how Northwestern and Illinois played. I'm just saying, keep an eye on the Scarlet Knights right now. In terms of the spreads, 21 right now. What's it going to be next week? Probably in the 20s again. 2 weeks from now at home against Michigan State. Maybe at least a 9-point dog at home. I could see it. And those might be smart plays. So keep that penciled in, folks. On the flip side, with what Michigan's doing right now, and just from a broad perspective of what Michigan's doing right now, this team looks like the best team Harbaugh's ever had. Now, they lost Ronnie Bell, their top wide receiver. That's a huge blow to the offense, but that offense has not stopped. Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins, and Donovan Edwards, as I just mentioned, 3-headed monster at running back. And Edwards is a true freshman. He doesn't get the bulk of the carries. Corum and Haskins do. Cade McNamara, solid quarterback. When he plays him, J.J. McCarthy, true freshman quarterback, who I thought was going to end up starting anyway. Solid quarterback. So you look at what Jim Harbaugh's been able to do this year through 3 games. Total domination. Now, they're not beating world beaters. Western Michigan, Washington, Northern Illinois. All at home, by the way. And today's at home. So after 4 straight home games over the year, Michigan's going to have 3 of the next 4 on the road. And 4 of the next 8. Excuse me. Beg your pardon. 6 of the next 8 on the road to end the season. They are expected to pretty much beat down Rutgers today. They're at Wisconsin, at Nebraska. Home against Northwestern, at Michigan State. Home against Indiana, at Penn State, at Maryland. And then, they host Ohio State in the game this year. But, folks, 47, 31, 63 points, all in a row. And they've given up a combined 34 points this year through 3 games. They're only giving up a little over than 10 points a game. 11. Do the quick math in my head. 11 points, something points a game. That's dominant. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you're playing. That's dominant. This team looks different. So the number 19 right now, I expect them to beat the Scarlet Knights today. And then over the next 2 weeks, I can't, frankly, with the way they're playing, Wisconsin's going to be a tough game, but to me, they'll beat Nebraska, they'll beat Northwestern. This team at best is going to be 7-0, going against that big showdown at Michigan State at the end of October. Then we'll see. Then we will truly see if this team is bound for finally to beat Ohio State to a Big Ten championship, to the college football playoff. But to me, I think they are certainly for real. You cannot discount the Michigan Wolverines moving forward. And today, they could very well try to pour it on my poor Scarlet Knights today. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we'll dive into some more games going on today. Let's take a look at Notre Dame and Wisconsin. Take a look at some of the implications of some of these other games. It's a bit of a lighter week aside from some of our picks we're making today later in the show. But other than that, it's still a good week of college football. Keep it locked here. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Inside here, College Football Pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Nick Kosko with you, of course, as always. We'll lead you up to 9 a.m. today as we get you prepared for the kickoff of college football today. Lots of interesting matchups. We just dove in a lot to Rutgers, Michigan. Of course, we'll circle back around to that. That'll be one of our picks. We'll touch upon Texas A&M and Arkansas, top 25 matchup coming up as well. But I wanted to dive into a couple things right here at the moment. Notre Dame, Wisconsin is a fascinating football game, and this is, it's at a neutral site. It's at Soldier Field in Chicago, and based on a lot of matchup predictors and ESPN's FPI, Wisconsin is the favorite here based on that. It's going to be a close game, and they're nearly a touchdown favorite as well. So Vegas does not care about neutral site. They don't care about Wisconsin's early loss to Penn State. They don't care about the week off, and they certainly don't care about the rankings, which Notre Dame is number 12, Wisconsin number 18, and they don't care about Notre Dame's 3-0 record because, frankly, when I look at Notre Dame's 3-0 record, they escaped at Florida State, and Florida State was embarrassed by Jacksonville State on that last-second loss. They edged out Toledo, and then they hosted, that was at home, by the way, and they hosted Purdue last week, and they just beat them by 27-13. It wasn't overly impressive. Really, the guy who's been impressive this year is Jack Cohn, their quarterback. He's been pretty darn good this year, and he's probably the reason why this team is still 3-0, and they haven't lost. Through this season, 828 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, 63% of his passes have been completed. He's figured it out since leaving Wisconsin. Kyron Williams, on the other hand, for Notre Dame, pretty solid. 211 yards through 3 games, 2 touchdowns, 4.6 yards a carry. He's been good, but those 2 guys have to make the offense go. And so far, they haven't exploded. The defense has been, picking up recently. But again, does this scream a top 12 team in the country right now? Certainly a ranked team. They're a good football team, but when again, it was at Florida State, first game of the year. The Mackenzie Milton story was very nice, so I get it. First game, okay. But you look at Florida State since then, not that good. Mike Norvell might be on his way out at this point. There's so much panic in the streets down there in Tallahassee. The Toledo win, it's not what you expect. It's not exactly what you want if you are Notre Dame. You should be handling that team. And the Purdue game, same thing. All right, Big Ten team, but it's not the Big Ten's best team. You should be handling them too. Here's your real test. Wisconsin. Now, will Jack Cohn get up for this game and go off like he did week 1 because it's his former school? I could easily see that. But Wisconsin also has something to prove. Because you look at Wisconsin this year. Tough home loss to Penn State to open up the year, 16-10. Offense didn't really get in gear. They played Eastern Michigan 2 weeks ago before they go into their bye week. And for a guy who is I guess you have to say hyped up in Graham Mertz, because I'm guilty of this too, of thinking how good he was and how good he was going to be again this season. Graham Mertz, very efficient, don't get me wrong. 14 of 17, 141 yards. He didn't have to do much because the run game dominated Eastern Michigan that day with Ches Malusi, Isaac Gerendo, Jalen Berger finally got some good playing time. Braylon Allen. They all scored touchdowns on the ground. They were responsible for all 4 Wisconsin touchdowns. So Mertz did not have to do much in the passing game, which I understand. I can understand that. But Graham Mertz has not inspired much confidence in stellar quarterback play like you would have thought he would have been doing by this point. He doesn't look the same as he did. Again, you hate to bring it back to this, but week 1 last year against Illinois, where he went off, he threw 1 incompletion, had a perfect passer rating, tossed 4 or 5 touchdowns, looked unstoppable. Then he goes on the COVID list. Wisconsin ends up getting 2 games canceled, and he's not the same after that. Now, I'm not saying one has to do with the other. But it's telling. He has 1 great game, and then he's an average quarterback for the rest of the season. And so far, he's an average quarterback. I thought he'd be one of the best in the Big Ten. Right now, I'm thinking C.J. Stroud over Ohio State is going to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Graham Mertz is going to be right up there. Michael Penix Jr. is going to be great again. Taulia Tagovailoa looks like the best quarterback in the Big Ten right now out of Maryland. He looks pretty darn good. Peyton Thorne for Michigan State is lighting it up right now as well. And the quarterback play has gone down in the Big Ten this year after what I thought it was going to be leading into the year. So in this matchup, Jack Cohn clearly has the advantage. Does he have a better run game than Wisconsin? Probably not. He has the best running back out of all of them. But Wisconsin has a very balanced rushing attack. But if I'm going to have to trust one of these quarterbacks to really air it out today and take over this game, I'm going to roll with Jack Cohn. It's as simple as that. Jack Cohn is much better. He transferred because Wisconsin went all in on Graham Mertz. Otherwise, who knows? Maybe Cohn would have stayed in Wisconsin and would have tried to beat out Mertz. But, he got the change of scenery. It's working out for him. He loves it over with Brian Kelly's squad right now. And, hey, despite the fact they might not be as good as they are on paper, Notre Dame is still 3-0, folks. So, yeah, that's right. I'm flipping it around now. They're still 3-0, and they're still a top 12 team in the country. If this were in Wisconsin, then I'd say the Badgers would be juiced up a little bit. But this is at Soldier Field, to that neutral site. So I don't know what that's going to do for the Wisconsin faithful. But as far as this game is concerned, Wisconsin 6.5-point favorite. I'm almost inclined to take Notre Dame right here with these points at plus 6.5. This is not one of my picks, and it's one of these weird ones today that I stayed away from, which we'll dive into the rest of my picks coming up in the next segment. But I stayed away from this one because I didn't quite get a good feel for this game because it's not at anybody's home stadium, which is a shame in my opinion. That's a damn shame. I don't know why this game couldn't be in Madison, getting that place jumping, or they couldn't schedule this at Notre Dame. Oh my goodness! Then you get a Drew Brees, Mike Tirico special on the NBC broadcast if it was at Notre Dame. Now, wouldn't you love that? I would love that for sure. But fact of the matter is, it's at Soldier Field, and I cannot get a good feel for this game. I just can't. If you want to take Wisconsin 6.5, be my guest. If you want to take Notre Dame plus 6.5, be my guest. I would lean towards Notre Dame right now, but I really cannot say for sure today. It's a very weird game, but it's going to be a good one. It's certainly going to be a good one. All right, the other big news that happened very quietly, actually. So USC, we know I talked a lot about them last week because they fired Clay Helton, excuse me, and they elevated Dante Williams to interim head coach. Now, there's a lot of talk about who's going to be the next USC head coach. Are they going to get James Franklin? Are they going to get Luke Fickell? Are they going to bring Urban Meyer back to college football? Are they going to bring Bob Stoops or Chris Peterson out of retirement? What exactly are they get? Are they going to get Mario Cristobal to jump divisions in the Pac-12 and come down to USC instead? Like Deion Sanders. Reggie Bush wants Deion Sanders. What are they going to do? So they quieted the coaching talk, just for now, because they did get a win over the weekend over Washington State. But in that game, something happened. This was very quiet, and this broke a little bit later yesterday. Thanks to our good friends at uscfootball.com of the 24/7 Sports Network. Jackson Dart, the quarterback. Now, mind you, he's a true freshman. He stepped in for Keaton Slovis, who was a preseason Heisman contender. And everyone's saying, all right, Slovis is going to be one of those first-round picks this year because he is pretty darn good. So Slovis goes out with an injury. Dart comes in and absolutely lights it up. And I mean lights it up. Let me get the numbers for you against Washington State. 30 of 46, 391 yards. Now, 4 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks, granted. But he also had 32 rushing yards. I mean, this kid just absolutely lit it up in a 45-14 win. Slovis was knocked out after just 2 passes. But here's what happened, folks. And I've been teasing you long enough. Jackson Dart underwent surgery this week. He didn't practice. He tore his meniscus in that game. You think to yourself, how's that possible? He played the whole game. Well, he tore his meniscus. And sure enough, his knee did not feel right after that game. So now what do you do if you're USC? You get this big win. You're trying to bounce back. And, you're trying to keep up with UCLA in your own division. You want to get back to the Pac-12 championship. You got Oregon State today, later tonight, of course, 10:30 our time on the East Coast and 7:30 on the West Coast. You're hosting Oregon State. It's a winnable game. Oregon State, they don't seem to be slouches this year, but it's a game that you probably should win. But now you might not have your top two quarterbacks. And frankly, the way Dart played in that game, now granted, it was his first game and he played in relief and he lit it up. So the quick reaction is to say Jackson Dart should start. He's got to start over Keaton Slovis. If Slovis is not ready, Miller Moss, another true freshman, by the way, Jackson Dart and Miller Moss committed in the same class to the same school to battle it out. They were not afraid of each other, which you like to see, actually. It's a little bit refreshing. It's a little refreshing. But now, what if he has to play? Miller Moss could be good. Miller Moss could be very good too, right away. But frankly, I think the Trojans are screwed. Now, Slovis should come back, if not this week, by next week, for game number 5. But if you have your third-string quarterback and he's also a true freshman and he's got to start today, oh boy, USC's in trouble. But the reason why I think this is actually a bigger deal than people are making it out to be, now granted, it was under the radar. Okay, so nobody really expected this on Jackson Dart. And if Slovis plays this week, well then you're going to pump the brakes a little bit because he'll be back in the lineup. And overall, Slovis is a pretty good quarterback. And even this year, he was not too shabby through 2+ games. 52 of 80 passing, 487 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. And he completed 65% of his passes. And throughout his career, he's been pretty good. Just under 70%, 50 touchdowns, only 17 picks. And he's got nearly 6,000 yards since 2019. And again, that's with the shortened season last year. So that's roughly 20-ish games, around 19, 20 games. So he's been pretty good. But USC, I think this is why they are screwed now. Because Jackson Dart, the way he played, was definitely going to start this week. If he was not hurt, he was going to start. But Slovis is still a quote-unquote question and unknown if he's going to play this week and suit up. Dart would have started. And by the way he played and the way he's been hyped up this year, his pedigree and potential coming in, Jackson Dart would have ran away with this job, and USC would have been in a much better position to win their division and get to the Pac-12 championship game. Now, I'm not saying Keaton Slovis can't do that, but the way Jackson Dart, that name, Jackson Dart, that is such a quarterback name. But USC, they've been a mess this year for what it's worth with the coaching. If you fire your coach after 2 games, you are a mess for what it's worth. Okay, I don't care if you're 2-1 and you're riding high off a win, and you're gonna get Oregon State today. Even if you win, you're still a mess. You fired your coach before midseason. Now they could very well get back to the Pac-12 title game, even with Keaton Slovis. But how healthy is he going to be? And if he doesn't play this week, is Miller Moss going to play? And if Miller Moss plays, do you even win this football game? Jackson Dart, to me, with the way he played last week, the juice he injected into the program, it's like USC turned the page from Clay Helton trying to be himself and lead Keaton Slovis and the Trojans back to the Pac-12 title game. They've now turned the page to Dante Williams. All right, we're going to strike while the iron's hot. We'll see what you can do as an interim head coach. Oh, Jackson Dart, that 4-star we recruited, that borderline 5-star quarterback we recruited and came in, he's going to play right now, but Slovis is hurt. Oh, my God, he just lit it up. He threw for about 400 yards in relief. Tossed 4 touchdowns, and we won by 31 points. That guy was your ticket to get back on brand. Jackson Dart is such a USC name. You want to talk about the glitz and glamour of USC and bringing them back to relevant. Again, they are a relevant program, but they're not in the thick of things right now, which is a big problem for that school and that program. But you want to talk about a guy who can lead you back to that'd be Jackson Dart. And now he's probably out for a majority of it. For now, it looks like he's not going to be out the entire season because it was minor surgery. But without him, you're relying on Slovis to recapture his magic, or Miller Moss better be also a really great true freshman quarterback. Otherwise, this is going to be a long 2021 season for USC, or maybe one of those middling average ones that's going to feel long, that between the 6 and 8 wins, maybe a 6 and 6, 8 and 4 regular season, then you get a bowl game and all right, go out with a win or a loss, and then you go on to the next season, and then here comes the full range of the coaching search. What happens after that? I'm telling you, folks, it's going to be a long year if they can't right the ship now. Now you may have thought they righted the ship last week with the win, but I really thought this kid, Jackson Dart, was going to be the key to the Trojans recapturing some magic moving forward this season. So he's out for an extended period of time, meniscus tear. Oh, it's just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. One other quick note, and I saw this, and I want to give credit where credit is due. I won't spend really much time on this because it's just a pure hypothetical, and we're only 3 games into the season. This was interesting. Damon Amendolara from CBS Sports Radio. Interesting theory yesterday. Or this might have been earlier in the week, actually. I think I saw it yesterday. He suggested a school like Penn State makes a call to Urban Meyer. Now you may be thinking to yourself, they have James Franklin, and Urban Meyer's in the NFL. And if he came back to college, why would it not be USC? First, it was either USC or Texas. It was were the 2 locations for Urban Meyer. Why wouldn't it be one of those? Well, here's what he proposed. If James Franklin actually leaves for USC, and I could totally see him do it, as far as one of these guys that's in a coaching position that's top notch, a la Mario Cristobal at Oregon or James Franklin at Penn State right now. Heck, even a Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, because Cincinnati is going to the Big 12 in a couple of years. So, I mean, Fickell's an Ohio guy. But you mean to tell me if Franklin doesn't take, or if he takes a USC job, I could see it. Out of those guys, I think he'd be the most likely to take it. He takes that job. This is what was suggested. Why not Penn State call Urban Meyer? The more I think about it, I'm like, why wouldn't you engage that interest? Now, this is under the scenario of Jacksonville absolutely just bombs out this year, and Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick, Clemson legend, just continues to struggle this year, and Urban Meyer's like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Let me get back to a program in college, and I can win right away. We could do that right. You could do that right at Penn State. Now, that would be fast. That would be absolutely fascinating. Can you imagine? Same division as Ohio State, where he led that school to a national title, a couple of Big Ten title games. Urban Meyer in the blue and white. Urban Meyer at a whiteout game as the home coach. Oh, fascinating. And he'd win. He would win instantly there, too. I'm talking national championship within the first 3 years. It would happen. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break once again. On the other side, we'll wrap up the show with our 5 picks, 11-4 on the season. So don't go away. See if we can get another 5-0 week coming up here in week 4. It's college football pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Now back to college football pick'em with Nick Kosko, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Final segment of the show right here on college football pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you, taking up to 9 a.m. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Usc Gym in Egg Harbor Township. I thought I was going to give you enough. I thought I gave you enough Rutgers, but of course I cannot stop there. I got to give you Rutgers one more time because we're going to dive right into our picks for this week. 11-4 on the season, 5-0 last week for the first time ever, by the way. We've been close. We've been close before. This time, we actually made it happen. So let's try to do it again. Rutgers at Michigan. Rutgers 21-point dog on the road is where we got it. This one is very, very interesting, folks. Because Michigan could easily win this game by 35 with that running attack. And Rutgers definitely struggles in the run defense department. As far as how I see it shaping out, well, I think my Scarlet Knights, I'm feeling a little optimistic that they are going to keep this game closer than anticipated. They're not going to win. They're certainly not going to win. But they'll keep this game closer. Michigan might pull away a little bit in the end, but I think it'll be just enough for Rutgers to cover that 21-point spread. It's 3 touchdowns. It's a big ask for a team at home in Michigan. They're certainly capable. Don't get me wrong. Certainly capable, but the way the Scarlet Knights play defense overall and special teams this year, those are big factors. Now, it's up to the offense to keep up with the Wolverines, because the Wolverines could, we've seen them put up 60 points just by running the football, essentially. And they'll sprinkle in some passes there. Rutgers, meanwhile, has to throw the kitchen sink to keep up with them offensively right now, because they are still a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of their offensive line play. And, quarterback play, Noah Vedral, he lit up Delaware last week. Don't get me wrong. It was good for him, but it was Delaware. It's not Michigan, all right? This is a different maize and blue team here. But I'm still rolling my Scarlet Knights. Plus 21 on the road. We will take a chance with them, and hopefully they don't let us down here this week. I forget if we picked them, actually. We did. We did pick Rutgers a couple weeks ago, because they were 2-point favorites on the road against Syracuse, and they won that game by 10. So we like my Scarlet Knights a little bit more this year from a betting perspective. All right, Texas A&M and Arkansas. This was the big game that I was talking about and teasing pretty much the entire show. Top 25 showdown at 3:30. Good old CBS on this one. So get ready for that SEC on CBS music to ring in your ears as you turn on your television today. Texas A&M and Arkansas. Big one. Sam Pittman and the Razorbacks are at home. This game has moved. I'm telling you, this game actually, this is, now we make notes of these significant movements. Now, the money is going towards Texas A&M right now, because we opened this one up at plus 4.5 for Arkansas as home dogs. It's now 5.5, folks. All right, the Aggies are 5.5-point favorites. They don't have Haynes King, their quarterback. They have Zach Calzada back there. Now, it is a drop-off. It's not the biggest drop-off in the world, because Calzada is solid for the most part. But if you don't have Haynes King in there, the Aggies were relying on this kid to be the difference maker between last year and this year. Now, that's nothing against Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond was very good for them over the course of a few years. But when you have Haynes King in there, he provides another dual threat. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's got that ability, and he was letting it up until he got hurt. Looking pretty good. The Aggies are a top 10 team. But this is a very interesting Arkansas team, and I told our good buddy Rich Quinones on Back Your Play on Thursday, right here on this very station, 4 to 6. I told him that Arkansas has something brewing. Sam Pittman was one of these sneaky hires a couple years ago, and this Arkansas program has been steadily building themselves up in the SEC over the past couple of seasons, and you saw a little bit of it last year. This is a highly competitive team. And the way they dominated Texas the other week. Now, again, Texas, solid football team, but out in the Big 12. They're not, they're no Georgia or Alabama, but that's the solid win for Arkansas this year. Now, they beat up on Rice, but they beat up on Texas at home, and then they beat down Georgia Southern. All right, so it's not that impressive of a schedule, but they did well enough to warrant a top 20 ranking, which I agree with. I'm on board with the Razorbacks. As Sam Pittman would say, yes, sir, we are on Arkansas. Okay, plus 5.5. That line has shifted. So if we're going to get another point at home for the Razorbacks, then you bet your butt I am certainly going to take the Arkansas Razorbacks. And, they are a well-balanced team. KJ Jefferson, solid quarterback. He's not lighting it up on the stat sheet, but, over 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Over 60% of his passes have been completed. They have a well-balanced running attack, which does involve Jefferson. Traylon Smith, their running back. He's averaging over 5 yards a pop as well, 3 touchdowns on the ground. And don't forget about my guy. I talked about him earlier in the offseason. Traylon Burks, their wide receiver. Don't forget about him. This guy could take it over. This guy could take over a game. He's averaging over 15 yards a catch, 13 on the year, 206 yards, does have 1 touchdown. I'm waiting for his breakout game. All right, he can really make this offense go. I like Treylon Burks. All right, he is awesome. And also, one of my favorite, also, Arkansas just has they have these budding, they don't have superstars, but they have these budding superstars throughout the entire team. And they have 2 of my favorite guys on defense, including my favorite name. All right, linebacker Bumperpool, one of the best tacklers in the nation. And then Jalen Catalon in the defensive backfield. He is a ball hawk. I'm telling you, folks, watch out for Arkansas. So that's why we're going to roll with the plus 5.5 today over Texas A&M. All right, Nebraska at Michigan State. Very intriguing game, only because Nebraska stinks. I still think they stink. I'm not a fan of Nebraska at all. I liked the Scott Frost hire. He comes back to his alma mater. I loved him at UCF because I'm a big UCF fan. The de facto 2017 national champions, right? All right, hilarious. But they stink. You beat up on Fordham. Congratulations. You beat up on Fordham. You beat up on Buffalo. Okay. Last week they showed me a little something on the road in Norman against Oklahoma. You showed me something, losing just 23-16. All right. But Oklahoma might not be a world beater again this year. I mean, they might not be a college football playoff-esque type team, even if they might make it because the Big 12, I don't really see them losing in the Big 12 either. But Nebraska lost to Illinois early on in the year, and Illinois has looked completely different since then. Michigan State, meanwhile, as I mentioned before, is for real. All right, they're top 20 now. Peyton Thorne lighting it up at quarterback. Kenneth Walker, the Wake Forest transfer, is the best running back in the country right now, at least in terms of the stats. He leads the country in rushing with 493 yards, so we're almost at that 500-yard mark through just 3 games. That's absurd. By the way, 57 carries, 5 touchdowns. This guy's practically getting a touchdown every 10th carry. How do you stop that? And they're only a 5-point favorite at home, which is why I was like, all right, I will definitely consider taking that. And I did take it, and we're going to keep it because it stayed there. They're at home. I don't expect Nebraska to really keep up with Michigan State at this point. I think they're going to get boat raced, to be honest with you. So 7 o'clock tonight, watch that one. Michigan State -5 at home over Nebraska. LSU at Mississippi State. This is a bit of a revenge game for the Tigers after last year's embarrassment at the hands of Mississippi State when Mike Leach came into the SEC. The air raid offense was alive, and this line has vastly shifted. It basically flipped from earlier in the week. LSU is a 2.5-point favorite now at home, on the road. So they are -2.5 compared to being a road dog. And the odds makers, they like LSU because they don't trust Mississippi State. And again, I don't trust Mississippi State either. So we are rolling with more favorites this week than we are underdogs. And I'm going to roll LSU -2.5, practically a pick 'em. Will Rogers, on the stat sheet is looking good. Over 1,000 yards. He's got 8 touchdowns through 3 games. But they beat Louisiana Tech. Okay, you beat NC State. I'll give you NC State. Okay, solid team, but it was you had that game at home. It's a Power 5 opponent. At Memphis, you blew that game. You didn't look good at all. I can't trust Mississippi State. LSU has a far better defense than they did last year, and right now I prefer their quarterback Max Johnson over Will Rogers because Mike Leach's air raid offense, for how good it is, how well it succeeded in the Big 12 at Texas Tech, and how well it did at Washington State in the Pac-12 role all those years, it doesn't sustain itself like it does over there in the SEC. All right, it does not. It just cannot sustain itself. I don't trust them that much. I need to see a lot more out of Mississippi State before I start really rolling with them. So I'm going to roll with LSU -2.5 on the road. All right, final game, Miami of Ohio at Army. And now, we're going off the beaten path a little bit with this game. But, I mentioned to Rich the other day, I love Army. I love the way they play. Always did. Always have. Always will. Triple option offense, run heavy, sprinkle the occasional pass in there, and be a swarming defense that attacks the ball carrier, forces turnovers. 8.5 at home was where we first saw it, and at that point, I was like, you got to take that. But now the money is going towards Miami of Ohio. Army's 3-0. They're solid. The money is towards Miami of Ohio, and the spread is now -7.5 in favor of Army. So you bet your butt we are definitely taking Army now. We're sticking with them. Over under 48.5. Might hit the under, but I could see this game easily being a one of those 28-10 type of games in terms of Army winning, and they're at home. All right, it's at West Point. So let's roll with the Black Knights. All right, quick recap on our 5 picks this week. We're in different corners of the country this week. Rutgers plus 21 at Michigan. Arkansas plus 5.5 at home over Texas A&M. Michigan State minus 5 at home over Nebraska. LSU minus 2.5 at Mississippi State. And we have Army minus 7.5 at home against Miami of Ohio. All right, that is going to do it for me. Keep it locked here for further programming and enjoy the college football today, folks. It's going to be another banner week, week 4 of the college football season. You've been listening to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.